Hello all, welcome to the new Simply Put series by Kalam Academy. This is Priyanka Mahapatra, faculty at Kalam. Today we will be having a detailed discussion on the newspaper dated 25th November and 27th November. In the 25th November Hindu edition and the text and the context section had an article based on the tunnel collapse, the Uttarakhand's tunnel collapse. So that was already discussed in the previous video, so we won't be discussing it anymore. In this discussion, today we will be having the articles based on the Indian Express newspaper, that is the sickle cell breakthrough, and about the firing by the NASA aircraft. Okay, apart from that, there was an important article in the digital section of the Indian Express newspaper about the 15 years completion of the Mumbai terror attacks, that also we'll be discussing. So let's get started. So the first article which we are going to discuss is about the gene therapy that revolutionized the treatment of sickle cell disease. So this is important from your GS paper 3 perspective. So why this was in news? Because the first therapy based on the gene editing technology CRISPR-Cas9 for the sickle cell disease and thalassemia has been approved in the United Kingdom. So this is a great revolution. This is a revolutionary treatment for the disorders like sickle cell and thalassemia. And it is much useful for India, where an estimated 30,000 to 40,000 children in India are born with this disorder every year. Also, India has the largest number of children with thalassemia major in the world, around 1 to 1.5 lakhs. So you know now the intensity of this disease and how badly it has affected India. It is mostly prevalent in African countries, especially Nigeria. So this gene editing technology, CRISPR-Cas9, is very much important from our exam perspective. It has already come in prelims more than twice. So you should be knowing that CRISPR-Cas9 is a gene editing technology, is a molecular Caesar by which you can edit the genes. So let's now understand about the disease sickle cell anemia. What will happen? It is a genetic disease. It is a genetic error that happens in case of red blood cells. As the name suggests, sickle. The red blood cell will assume a crescent shape, like a sickle. And because of this assumption of the shape, what happens? It cannot move around easily in the vessels. You can see it in the figure over here. In case of normal red blood cell, it is easily moving throughout the vessels. But again, when in case of abnormal sickle cell RBC, it is blocking the blood flow. The sickle cells are blocking the blood flow over here because of the sticky nature. Okay, that is how it causes the blocked blood flow, thereby causing severe pain, infections, anemia, or even death in some cases. Okay, so sickle cell disease and thalassemia, both they are connected to the gene errors only, which is related to the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what? It is a protein in the RBC that carries oxygen to your organs and tissues. Okay, and if that gets affected, then you know the consequence. In case of thalassemia also, it is related to the low levels of hemoglobin, thereby leading to fatigue, shortness of breath, and irregular heartbeats. And the people affected by thalassemia, they need blood transfusion throughout their life, right? So let's now understand the gene therapy, how it is helpful in the treatment of sickle cell disease and thalassemia. So here the scientists, what they will do, they will use the patient's own blood stem cells. Why they will use the patient's own blood stem cells when he or she is already affected? Because they will try to trigger the body to produce their own fetal hemoglobin. They will use body's own mechanism to produce more of fetal hemoglobin, because the fetal hemoglobin, you need to understand here that they are present in everybody at birth and they do not carry any abnormalities as adult hemoglobin. So using the gene therapy, they will try to use the body's own mechanism. They will trigger the gene named BCL11A and trigger the body to produce more of fetal hemoglobin, and thereby all the symptoms will vanish away. Understood? So before that, what we used to do before the gene therapy came into picture, the only way of treating this disease was bone marrow transplant, where a closely matched donor was always needed and it was difficult to find out. But now what will happen, the Casgevy, the name of the CRISPR-Cas9 molecular Caesar used in the process of treatment of sickle cell disease, it will edit the faulty gene. It will happen in our own body. We did not require any help, any external help to come, any external donor to come. That is the main advantage over here. So this therapy will edit the faulty gene that leads to these blood disorders that we already discussed now and potentially cure the person for life. So the only challenge here is the huge cost involved, and that in the tune of $2 million per patient, right? So this was all you need to know for your exam point of view. So let's now discuss the next article about the NASA aircraft, how it has fired a laser at Earth and what does it mean. So this is very important from your GS3 perspective and prelims perspective as well. Okay. So what happened on November 14? Why November 14 is very important for NASA? On that day, NASA could pick up a laser signal fired from its spacecraft named Psyche, which is over 16 million kilometers away now. And in this process, it took just 50 seconds of time to travel 10 million miles. So, what is so big deal about it? Why we are so happy about this fact now? Why we are even discussing it? Because of this technological fiat, we have broken down new ground for deep space communication. And due to which someday we are imagining that it would allow humans to stream video calls on Mars. Imagine that you are making a video call from Mars. Currently, you must understand that in what way we are making such communications and why we are so happy about the laser communication now. Because most of the communication that is happening today is by the radio waves, which is having the highest wavelengths but lowest frequencies in the electromagnetic spectrum. So here the biggest challenge is to communicate far away from the Earth. Okay, but the NASA is trying to bring this communication by laser by using the near infrared rays in order to have higher data rate communications capable of sending high definition videos, capable of sending scientific information, high definition images, and also streaming video. Because NASA is up to making very big space expeditions in the coming times, including life on Mars. So let's now understand about the Psyche spacecraft which we are talking now. It is the NASA's first ever space mission to study the metallic asteroid named 16 Psyche, which is in the main asteroid belt between the Mars and Jupiter. It is in the far reaches of that belt. So it has already traveled 16 million kilometers and it is on the way to reach there. Okay, it will travel a total of 2.2 billion miles to reach there. And it will be reaching around 2029. Okay, after that, it would be studying the origin of planetary cores by orbiting and staying there around the metallic asteroid there. Okay, so that was all about the Psyche spacecraft you needed to know from the prelims perspective. Now come to the radio waves again. As we have discussed, the radio waves are the widely used means for communication to date than other electromagnetic waves. So why this was all preferred? Because they were having, radio waves are having one of the larger wavelengths, they are having one of the higher bandwidths, due to which more data can be transmitted per second. So now it is clear that the scientists would ideally need one of the highest wavelengths for the increased data transfer. Now what are they searching for is to have the highest wavelengths around to increase the rate of data transfer. Okay, so here what happens with the shorter wavelengths? You need to understand from the prelims perspective that the shorter wavelengths, they tend to scatter when they come in contact with any interference. That does not happen with the longer wavelength, longer bandwidth, due to which the radio waves can easily pass through atmosphere regardless of whether they can pass through the foliage, through most of the buildings, as well as bend around obstructions. Right? So this was all needed from your prelims point of view to know about the radio waves, why this was used till date, and why we need to explore more about the highest bandwidths in order to increase the data transfer. Right? So again, now the breakthrough has happened because of the NASA's Deep Space Optical Communications Experiment, that is DSOC experiment, due to which it could capture the laser signals from very far away distance from the Earth. It has actually used the near infrared laser signals. This you need to remember from your prelims perspective. So it has actually allowed data rates at least 10 times higher than the presently used radio communication, enabling higher resolution images, large volumes of science data, and even streaming video. Right? And the Psyche spacecraft, which is already on the way to the metallic asteroid 16 Psyche, it was the first spacecraft to carry the DSOC transceiver. That is why the communication happened on November 14. Right? So this was all about this topic. Now we'll come to the third topic of the day, that is 15 years of 26/11, and how the Mumbai terror attacks has changed completely the India security infrastructure, and we will see that if gaps still remain. So this is very important from your GS paper 3 paper, that is security challenges and the management in border areas, linkages of organized crime with terrorism. So this is all the more important from UPSC perspective because of the 15 years completion this year. So any multiple of 5, any anniversary happening in the multiple of 5 is very, very important from the UPSC point of view. So we all know what happened on 26/11. The ease with which 10 Lashkar-e-Toiba gunmen sailed across the Arabian Sea from Karachi to Mumbai, and they were roaming around the city for 4 long days, has definitely exposed the gaping holes in the maritime security of India. Also, it has exposed the inadequacy of the counter-terrorism infrastructure then, and the inadequacy of the local police. It has definitely exposed India's unpreparedness to deal with such a scale. Right? So thereafter, some key decisions were taken on the security front. So now we'll be discussing what changes were made, how the old institutions which were lying defunct were reinvigorated, and what changes in law we made. So clearly there were some areas where the revamp needed to be done after the attacks. For example, in case of maritime security, there were roles being defined. Indian Navy was given overall charge for maritime security. Indian Coast Guard was given the responsibility for territorial waters. Similarly, marine police stations were installed all over the India's coastline for coordination purpose. Again, it was mandatory for all the vessels longer than 20 meters to have the automatic identification system that would transmit its identification information to the security agencies concerned. Similarly, in case of intelligence coordination, we strengthened the Intelligence Bureau's Multi-Agency Center MAC that would coordinate the exchange of intelligence between the central agencies, the armed forces, and the state police. Similarly, subsidiary MACs that had gone defunct during that time were revamped. Now the regular meetings are also being held that are made mandatory for the real-time exchange of information. Similarly, there were changes in laws as well. The Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA was amended to expand the definition of terrorism. Similarly, NIA Act, National Investigation Agency Act, was put into place where the National Investigation Agency was the central agency and it was the first truly federal investigation agency. Why? Because it gave powers to that central agency to take over terrorism, any terrorism case in the state suo motu without any consent of the state. So you now must have understood that how it clearly violated the federal structure of policing but still was put into place comfortably. So how this was possible? Because of the pressure of the public opinion that time, that everybody came on board and agreed they were on the same page. And an interesting fact that later on when National Counter-Terrorism Center was being proposed, it never saw the light of the day due to the politicization and lack of support of the parties. So now you can understand that what situation was created that time and how it led to the change in the laws, how it led to the coming up of the new laws, right? Then we would, so let's now see the other areas of revamp that happened as well. So with regard to the modernization of police forces, more funds were allocated by the Ministry of Home Affairs to the state government to make their police stations state of the art, equip them with modern technology, train their policemen to deal with modern day challenges like terrorism, and give them better weapons. Also, there was creation of crack commando teams among the police forces. Similarly, NSG also established its 4 regional hubs across the country, right? So these were the points under the modernization of the police forces. Again, there was a visible willingness of the West to cooperate with India on the matters of security. We could see increased cooperation from the West after the attacks because India and USA, they faced the same fate after their attacks, right? USA arrested David Coleman Headley, the man who conducted the reconnaissance of the 26/11 attacks, and provided India with all the crucial information on the way how the conspiracy was hatched in Pakistan with the active involvement of ISI. And this information helped us to nail Pakistan's culpability and embarrass it internationally, right? Thereafter, also, we could see an increased global understanding on the need to deal with Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, for which we could put Pakistan in the Financial Action Task Force grey list in 2018, due to which we could take action against the terror infrastructure of the LET and Jaish-e-Mohammed. So this was all about the revamp areas and how we revamped the total security infrastructure after the attacks happened. So these points are very, very important from the mains perspective. Please keep note of all the points and write in your mains answer directly, right? Let's now see the gaps that still persist. In which areas the gaps are still persisting? Do we need another attack to open up our eyes? Do we need another attack to keep the security infrastructure into place? So in this case, the state police forces, they continue to remain ill-equipped and poorly trained. There is continued political interference and politicization of the investigation cases. Then, in case of maritime security, there are limited options to track ships that do not transmit AIS signals, that is automatic identification system signals. Even the smaller shipping vessels, they do not have transponders yet. So we need to close these gaps as soon as possible, and we need to keep the infrastructure, the security infrastructure in place so that we are well equipped to deal with any situation, right? So this was all about the today's discussion. Thank you so much.